Ma'am.
I'd like to reconvene the meeting of Community Unit School District 300 Board of Education, August 9th, 2016. Mr. Alessio, please call the roll.
Alessio, present. Burley, Fiorentino.
Present.
Garcia.
Present.
Lopez. Miller.
Present.
Stevens.
Okay, please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I did not have any changes on the agenda. Anyone? Okay, motion to approve the agenda then?
Second.
Mr. Alessio?
Garcia.
Aye.
Alessio, aye. Fiorentino.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Sorry, 5-0. Can't count.
Mr. Hyde?
Good evening, Madam President, board members, staff, members of the community. Before we begin officially this evening, as has been our policy and practice for the last 2 years, I am going to ask you to join me in a moment of silence. We have lost one of our beloved D300 family members. Vicki Haas was employed with our district beginning in 1996 to present, serving our community for nearly 20 years. During her time with us, she had been a lunchroom supervisor at Perry Elementary School, an administrative aide at Westfield Community School, and most recently served as the principal secretary at Oak Ridge School. She is survived by her spouse and her children, and she passed away after a long battle with cancer. So if you'll join me for a moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Okay. Under board announcements, the only thing that I have is that we will be talking later on in the agenda about the charter school renewal. We have a hearing, charter school hearing set for August 17th out at Hampshire High School. Okay. Student staff recognition, Mr. Hyde.
Yes, ma'am. This evening, we're going to reschedule this because with just the start of school looming in about 5 short days, business days, surprisingly, these students didn't want to come back early and be recognized this evening. So we're going to invite them back at a regular board meeting after the school year starts. As you recall, this is our business incubator program. This is our first year that we've had the program. These students are the ones that won our own internal Shark Tank version and were recommended for funding going into their second year, their senior year of this program at Dundee Crown High School. As I shared at the last board meeting, very, very proud of the fact that these students competed recently on July 20th at the national competition in Chicago and won there as well. So they received another $5,000 in seed money for their program. So it's an exceptional testament to the program, the mentors, and the teachers who helped set it up. Kudos to Dr. Churchill, because this was definitely a pathway program or a program that he was very integrally involved in. So hopefully he's bringing it out to California and compete against each other and we can continue to win. So I'm issuing that challenge publicly. I'll text him that later. But that being said, we will reschedule those students to come back at a future day. At this time, we'll transition into the superintendent's report. I'll ask Ms. Harkin to join us at the podium. This is the time of the year that we do present our school district budget, and I think that the board and members of the community and those present here this evening will be very pleased with our overall school fiscal projections, but there are some cautions that we want to basically highlight as well, because sometimes there can be an overreaction when you see a solid fiscal plan moving forward. There's a tendency to say, well, why don't we do this and why don't we do that? But there are some impending issues that could affect us from the legislature, such as pension cost shift or property tax abatement, that could significantly impact our district finances moving forward. So at this time, Ms. Harkin, if you'll please take over the presentation.
So as Mr. Hyde indicated, it's that time of the year. If you recall the process that we need to follow in the state of Illinois, we will present tonight to you our tentative budget. We've been working on our budget since the time we adopted the 2015 levy in December. A timeline that we're following is on the board, and it all complies with what we have to do in relationship to the Illinois School Code. Tonight, we're going to review what the projections look like, and we're going to ask you to vote on the tentative budget later on in this board meeting, but you will officially vote on the budget in September. So I want to recap what are some of the components that went into developing this year's budget. Much of what's in front of you, which was presented to you earlier this year in February as part of our financial review meeting, and there haven't been a lot of significant changes other than one component. But I'll walk through all of those items just to give that context of how we develop the budget. Every year we take the previous year's budget, we do what are the normal increases and opportunities in relationship to where we see trend data happening. For our levy this year, CPI is the biggest portion that allows us to increase the tax levy on an annual basis. CPI for the blend of the last year and this year is 0.75%, so less than 1%. And we did see $50 million in new EAV this year, and that is up from the low at one point that was at $16 million. So we're starting to see a lot of growth, and I think if you drive around, it's been a lot of commercial growth, which has certainly been good to help assist us in the programs and the additions of things that we want to add in our programs for our students. General state aid is up $5.9 million. Much of that comes from the governor's budget in relationship to not prorating general state aid, as well as it's up because we did have full-day kindergarten, which is now covered by this, so we get additional dollars now to fund. If you recall, last year we indicated that we'd have to front-load the all-day kindergarten, but we would start to see additional general state aid to fund that program. So we are up in general state aid in relationship to the increase in the governor as well as the increase in our student enrollment. Right now, the federal, we're seeing pretty flat for all of our federal funding, and all of their state funding is relatively flat. Okay, so there's a lot of things up on this board, and this page probably makes me the proudest to be part of District 300 and be here underneath Mr. Hyde's leadership. These are all the great things that we're doing this coming school year for our kids. And these are the increases in the various areas to support the strong programs that we're putting into place to support exceptional education in District 300. The first item, most of them are salary. They're mostly positions. They're mostly in relationship, how do we provide better services and programs to our kids? Off the top, we always add, because we've made the commitment along with LEAD to make sure that we don't let our class sizes get to a portion that we don't feel are good for kids and good for our teachers. So we've got 20 additional positions budgeted in this budget for class size enrollment. We have 17 teachers for coaching and interventions. That's all at the elementary level. We have 8.5 teachers for the elementary science that's going on in the STEM. We have 8.5 teachers for our elementary art. We have 9 teachers for the alternative learning opportunity program for our high school and middle school at Dundee Crown and CMS to help those students that will be struggling. We have 6 additional digital learning coaches to support the one-to-one initiative that will be rolling out this quickly in the next couple of days. We have 5 teachers for ELA and Spanish at our middle schools. We have 3 additional FTE to help with some of our staffing issues that we had at elementary level for our specials. We have additional 4.0 FTEs for our class size and enrollment for our paras. And then we have 1 extra administrator that we added to help support our educational specialists for our early childhood program. So we did add a lot of staff, but I think if you look and see what's up there on the board, I think these are things that we can be very proud of that we'll show you later on in our projections that we feel that we can sustain and continue doing and providing to our students. But it really is what I think helps really support and make a strong educational system in District 300. We do continue to see increases in our insurance premiums, so that's about a 10% increase. That's where we've trended. We do have an increase in our tuition cost for our outplaced programs as well as our charter school tuition. We have a built-in 5% increase for our transportation services, and all other line items in the budget have remained flat. So this is the cautionary slide. We're going to show you the graphs that say if this impacts us, at what point do we may have to get a little nervous. I think Mr. Alessio, who serves on the Board Finance Committee, we're keeping our eye on it, but we also don't want to be in a position that we're putting money in the bank and not supporting programs, but we need to make sure that we're aware of this out there. And I think we've got time, should this happen, that we can react to it and really be thoughtful if we have to make any cuts. But at this point, we're not overreacting to any of it. But there are two big issues that continue to be percolating down in Springfield. The first one that continues to be talked about is the property tax freeze. And the second one is the talk of the pension shift. And I've tried to quantify how that could impact the district over the next 5 years, and we have a slide that will show what that does to our financial projections, but this gives the context into how it would occur. So property tax freeze, we're through the 2015 property tax bills are out, so chances are we wouldn't see any impact to the property taxes that we're currently receiving. We get half of that in this fiscal year. However, the 2016 levy, if legislation were to be passed to have a property tax freeze, we would see a portion of that impact in this fiscal year budget. That amount would be about $0.5 million loss in revenue. My projections are a 5-year projection, so I ran that out. If we had a property tax freeze that would continue to exist, and it wasn't a 1 or 2 year, we would see a loss in revenue of $15.4 million in FY21, and the cumulative effect between FY17 and FY21 would be $37 million. So that one has certainly some big impacts. The conversations that they're having is that we would get the increase from our new property, but we would not be able to increase our baseline property. The conversation, and we just received a notice today, that you would have to go out to referendum if you wanted to increase any of your current taxes you're collecting from existing homeowners. Pension shift, as I understand it, would be phased in over time. It would be 0.5% of our TRS earnings. Again, we don't see it at all happening this year because there's nothing that's been adopted by the legislation to show that. I've projected that if that were to happen, we possibly could see it for next fiscal year. For that line item, in FY18, we would see $0.5 million more of additional expense. And by FY21, it would be $2.4 million that would be additional expense. And the cumulative effect of that one would be about $5.7 million from the FY18 to FY21. So what does that do to our overall finances? These are the numbers the Board Finance sees these. This is how I present our financial projections. Really, if I can focus you on a number, our fund balance percentage, our target is 25%. So it isn't until you see the red numbers, which would be FY20, that we would drop below our 25% threshold. The numbers that I talked about in the previous slide are up there, and we would, at the point of FY21, have a $25 million expenditures exceeding our revenues. Again, we're not reacting to this. We'd have to start talking about it in FY19. Let's see what happens. We've been watching and waiting to see what's going to be happening for a long time. But certainly it's something we need to make sure, because we're certainly getting some concerns and issues raised in our community about some of these issues. This is just the visual. The blue line represents what our fund balance would be if we included the property tax shift, and we would include the property tax freeze and the pension shift. And the red line represents what our fund balance policy says we should be at. So you can see where the lines intersect in FY20, and that's where we would stop dropping. It is a fund balance target. One of the downsides to if we start eroding our fund balances, we would be back out for tax anticipation warrants. We would also be affected by our bond rating. We still have one more phase of our bond restructuring to go on, so it does cause us money and harm if we do go below that 25%, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Those are just things that we need to be aware of. This one now represents no property tax shift, no property tax freeze, no pension shift. What's happening with our finances. We've been very fortunate. In the next slide I'm going to walk you through, because our EAV has dropped, our general state aid has gone up significantly since FY, we'll look at the next slide, probably 12. So at this point in time, with the items we've just added, and if things continue trending the way they're trending, we won't start spending more than what we're bringing in revenue until FY18, and we're well above our 25% threshold. A lot of this has, maybe health insurance won't come in at 10%. It's got some built-in projections related to general state aid, but maybe the governor will come through and we'll have more money in general state aid and it'll sustain itself and the formula won't impact us. But we do want to keep our eye on, if we continue to operate at deficit just like we would in our own homes, at some point we deplete our savings account, and certainly that could be problematic. But the good news is, we're really in great financial shape, and part of it's because we've seen some very significant increases in general state aid over the last several years. So this is the slide that shows what's been happening with our general state aid. You can see a significant increase. We're at $40 million for fiscal year 17. In FY13, we were at $11.7 million. We have seen a $28.4 million increase in our general state aid. We are now, for this year, with our general state aid calculation, and we know what's trending with our EAV, we're at the bottom. Our EAV is low as it's going to go, and it's finally starting to trend up. So therefore, we're anticipating for FY18, and this is factored into the projections you've just seen in the previous slide, that we're going to drop back down to $35 million. We drop down to $33 million, or drop down to $31 million, underneath the current formula. So again, while part of where we said we started to deficit spend, part of that deficit spending has to do with the fact that we're going to go down $12.5 million in general state aid starting in FY21. So, the formula, that as we've seen it come through and some of the changes to it that are being proposed have flattened that out, because they're rewarding school districts, and it isn't based upon your EAV, it's based upon your student need. So, there's a chance that maybe that trend down doesn't happen, but until that's for sure, we haven't factored, but we have factored in what we know the current formula projects. So this is, we talked about before, the blue line represents what we believe our projected fund balance would be. The policy is the red line, and we don't see that line intersecting through FY21. So that's the one we're watching closely. We believe this is the one that we're going to aim for, and that's the one we'll work closely with Mr. Hayden, with the Board of Finance, to make sure we continue maintaining it. Starting to close, but certainly we're really in great financial shape in relationship to that. Next couple slides, these are some of the details. We do have the bond and interest fund. We do have the capital projects fund. We've got money in both of those budgets to cover the needs of those programs. Those are programs that have money in, money out, and that will be part of the budget you do adopt, so that's why it's up on that slide. But those aren't really related to our day-to-day operational. The individual funds, the ed fund, the O&M, the transportation, all those components that make up what we need to do to provide a daily education, that's in our detailed budget that you will be approving and was part of the board package tonight as well too. But this is just the background and some of that high-level information. One of the things we tend to do, or we like to do as part of this budget presentation, is we like to talk about how well we are fiscally responsible in District 300. The slide up there, the red slide and bar, represents what the state of Illinois on average spends per pupil on students. Ours is the blue bar. You can see we continue to be well below the state average in relationship to how the state spends, and we spend almost $2,100 less per student than the state average. If we compare ourselves to the Kane County unit school districts, we are that red bar up there. We spend $10,726. Geneva spends $14,731. If we spent that same amount that Geneva did, we would spend $74 million in District 300 on our students. I think that's something we can be very proud of, that we do a darn good job. And would we like to have that money and provide more for our students? Absolutely. Even if I look at Aurora East, we'd spend $11 million more. We're saving the taxpayers in Illinois and in our communities a significant amount of money because we spend less per our student, and we run a very effective organization. Our tax rate is a little bit higher, but we did have all the growth in relationship to all the buildings that got built several years ago when we got the growth. And so some of the other places have a tax base that they can support a little bit more, as well as we had a great conversation at the board finances. We really managed our tax rate back in the early 90s when the tax cap came in. We do have not the lowest, but we tend to be below average. So again, as I indicated to you earlier, I will be asking you later on to vote on the tentative budget. It will not be the formal budget. It's just that we will post it and we will place it here at the library and here at the school district. We'll put a notice in the newspaper that will let people know that we will be bringing it back for vote on 9/27 so we can have an open dialogue and conversation. There will be a hearing on the 27th of September. And we will put that notice in the newspaper to let people know about the process. And that is it.
Any questions or comments, board members? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harkin. At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Chris Sainsbury, up to the podium. I believe she has other staff with her. They are here this evening to present on the Perry Excellence Academy. For the board's background, last year we provided additional resources to Perry to target their most at-risk students, those who were 2 or more years behind. And really, the exceptional teacher who led that initiative is with us here this evening, so I'll let them introduce him. Based on his success last year, I have authorized an additional section to be added to Perry because the concern is, did we go deep enough? And then what happens to students who made more than 2 years growth in most cases, with this group in particular, when they are simply just pushed back into a traditional classroom? So rather than face that and to allow Ms. Sainsbury's vision to continue to grow, because it did have a significant impact on student outcomes, we made the commitment of some additional resources to help them expand the program. So they are here tonight to provide you with a brief overview and answer any questions that you might have about the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde. Good evening, Board of Education and community and staff members of District 300. We are very pleased to be here tonight, and I do want to thank Mr. Hyde for his support of our program. Our goal this evening is to provide you with some background information and program information about what Excellence Academy is and how it impacts our students at Perry Elementary School, and then certainly provide you some data that really indicates some of the results that we saw in our first year in this pilot model at Perry. So as Mr. Hyde stated, the pillars of the program really address some critical needs that we saw in our school community, which focus on the academic, attendance, behavioral, and social emotional needs of our students. And we created this program in support of District 300 to wrap our students and give them their supports that they need so that they can achieve academically. So the main focus of this program is really to increase student academic achievement by addressing the needs of the whole child. So that is our primary focus. Excellence Academy serves to enhance the range of academic, behavioral, and again, social emotional interventions that we currently already provide. So we really are looking for that target student who is being serviced already by District 300 and Perry staff and district staff. Who aren't seeing the growth that we would like for them to experience and see in the classroom as well as in their social emotional learning. When we thought about this program, we really wanted to make sure that we were intentional about the alignment of how we're using our resources. So looking at our strategic plan, goal number 4, developing the whole child, we really wanted to focus on our alignment with facilitating and making sure those effective systems are aligned. Strategic goal 4.2, encouraging positive behavior, respect towards others, and ensuring a safe environment at school. 4.3, facilitating and aligning effective wrap services around students based on their needs. And we would consider this a customized approach for the students based on their needs. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Mike Folta. He is our assistant principal at Perry Elementary School and has done an outstanding job in support of this program.
Thank you, Ms. Hansberry. Good evening, board, Mr. Hyde, community members, and staff members. So the chart we're looking at here, this is the supporting pillar for social and emotional component here at Perry, and also supporting Excellence Academy students. We developed a strong partnership with Streamwood Behavioral Health Systems at Perry. We have a site right at Perry to serve our students. We supported 1.5 full-time therapists at Perry. We referred 106 students to Streamwood. Out of those referrals, therapists have served an average of 90 students per week during lunch specials and other times of need. We also had 11 students that required a higher level of care. They were either hospitalized or attended a partial day program at Streamwood. Please refer to the pie chart, noticing the breakdown of with data we collected in terms of the groups that were supported through the therapists in terms of aggression, noncompliance, grief, death and loss, and then suicide. I'd like to introduce Mr. Matt Langton, who made this possible.
So to begin with, when Excellence Academy was formed, we developed objectives to make sure that the program was successful. So that first objective started by providing just targeted academic, social, emotional, and behavioral intervention for not only the students, but the family members as well. So we've really worked to communicate with the families overall. We do that through developing student success plans that align goals to the students' needs in both academic, behavioral, and attendance settings. In order to maintain the integrity of this program, we feel that the student-to-teacher ratio should be no greater than 13 students to 1 teacher. We engage families through many different avenues, but the biggest one is consistent home visits. So we make home visits many times weekly, if not a couple times a week, in order so the families know that they're supported. We establish high levels of student expectation and accountability. We use data binders, and the students track a lot of their own growth, as well as follow and abide by clear entrance and exit criteria, which we will cover in the next couple slides. And we really work to ensure regular and consistent access to grade level peers. So currently, our students in Excellence Academy from last year did attend specials with their peers and lunch, and this year we're looking to do a pushed-in co-taught model in both 4th and 5th grade.
So one of the things that we really wanted to consider when developing a program such as this one was the level of responsibility that we had in making sure that we were monitoring our data, monitoring the goals of this program, and ensuring the fidelity of what we set forth to do. So we really took a good look at what our entrance and exit criteria would be when we are considering students for a wraparound service program such as this one. So there were two. In each category of entrance and exit, there are 2 main criterion that we were really looking for with different subcategories under each one. So for the entrance criterion, we're really looking at risk of failing to meet the Illinois learning standards or at risk of retention. And then number 2, the student demonstrates a need for educational supports or social services beyond those currently provided by regular school programming. And on the opposite side, the 2 major for exit, we are looking to see our students perform within the grade level bands at the school's 75th percentile and above on math and reading Illinois learning standards, and really that they're no longer at risk for any kind of retention consideration. And number 2 demonstrates consistent academic and social emotional growth when supported by regular school programming options, so no longer superseding the regular programming options that are available. If we break that down more specifically, we really are targeting and honing in on the student who we feel would most benefit from this programming. So again, that first criterion, so at risk of failing to meet the Illinois learning standards or at risk of retention, we are looking for our students who are performing 2 or more years below grade level in reading and math on the district iReady benchmark assessment. We're looking for students who perform below grade level standards on the PARCC assessment in reading and or math. Consistently, meaning beyond 1 semester, performs below grade level expectations in math expressions unit assessments and our reading street unit assessments, which is our core curriculum. And then demonstrates minimal or below expected growth outcomes when supported with current Tier 2 and Tier 3 academic interventions that have been provided for longer than a semester. So we're really looking at those multiple points of data that's indicating that we need to do more to support our students further than what we already are. Okay. So that first slide really demonstrates the academic points that we're looking for. This slide demonstrates the social emotional points that we're looking for when considering a student. So again, this criterion for entrance demonstrates a need for educational support or social services beyond those currently provided. So this is a student who may be considered truant or has a history of high mobility, tardiness, and inconsistent schooling, identified family or personal trauma resulting in significant disruption in their learning, demonstrates difficulty managing emotions, which is documented through our office discipline referral process. We are looking for those trends, those frequent interpersonal conflicts with peers and adults, where it results in that significant loss of instructional time due to that emotional distress. In District 300, we do use the DEVRO Student Strengths Assessment, otherwise known as DESA. We do monitor students on that social emotional learning assessment. Students in this that we look for students who continue to demonstrate multiple areas of need when, again, current social emotional interventions are provided and last longer than 1 semester. So on the other flip side, again, this is the exit. So we really are looking to support our students through the exit process. So that is the goal. We hope to have students who will continue to move through this process this school year. As Mr. Langton has looped up with that one group of students, we have students who are currently meeting some of the academic exit criterion after just 1 school year. So we're getting closer, and they are in a consult phase to see if they can sustain their growth within the regular school supports, which is one of our criterion-based gradual release points. So for the exit, we are looking for students who can perform within grade level bands and or at the school's 75th percentile and above math and on math and reading Illinois learning standards, and no longer at risk of retention. So again, A, B, C, and D really refers to all those parameters very specifically. We are looking for expected growth when they are no longer provided with those superseding interventions and supports, that they can sustain that level of growth that's expected without those academic and social emotional supports. And the exit criterion for the number 2 exit criterion, the major ones, demonstrates consistent academic and social emotional growth when supported by regular school programming options. So the key factor here is, again, that our students would no longer need that intensive supports over time. We can gradually release them off those intensive supports. So regular and consistent school attendance would be a target for us, set 95% and above. Family enrollment and participation in our community RAP service supports, such as stream of behavioral health, mentoring program, bounce back trauma intervention, demonstrates the ability to manage emotions and conflicts. That would be, again, our office discipline referrals, and then also on that same measure of the DESA, which is that social emotional measure that we use across District 300.
The information that will be presented in the following slides will be the student achievement data from year 1. So on the following slide will be our student achievement triangles. So what you see here is the triangles from fall to spring based upon the iReady benchmark. So what's important to note is that the students who are in red on the triangle are 2 years or greater behind the grade level expectation, and the students that are in yellow are 1 to 2 years behind the grade level expectation. So as you can see in the fall, we had no students that met the grade level expectation. But then in spring, we had 33% of our students meet the grade level expectation, as well as we saw a decrease in the red to 42% of our students who were 2 years or greater below the grade level expectation. This slide just states the reading growth expectations that's outlined through iReady in our district. So in order to make 1 year's growth, a student would have to achieve 19 points of growth on their overall scale score. And then you can see for a 1.5 year growth, a 41-point growth. And for 2 years growth, they would need 54 points. So non-Excellence Academy 4th grade students at Perry Elementary had an average gain of 31 points, whereas students that were enrolled in the Excellence Academy program had an average gain of 50 points. So nearly 2 years growth for all students in the Excellence Academy program. What you see here is our math triangles. So again, red represents 2 years or more behind the grade level expectation. So at the beginning of the year, we had 0 students meeting grade level expectations, whereas at our spring benchmark, we had half of our students at grade level, and we decreased the red to 25% of our students who were 2 years or more below grade level. This next slide is much like the previous one about math growth expectations. In order to make 1 year's growth, the students needed to gain 22 scale score points. For a year and a half growth, 47 scale score points, and for 2 years growth, 62 scale score points. The Non-Excellence Academy 4th grade students at Perry made an average gain of 25 points, whereas the Excellence Academy students made an average gain of 47 points, or a year and a half growth in just 1 year's time. The following slides just show our attendance. We felt that this was the #1 piece of our students' loss of instructional time. So this shows 3-year trends. So in the red, you see the 2014-2015 attendance data, and our students missed 227 days of school in 2014-15, which resulted in 1,475 and a half hours of missed instruction. In 2015-2016, we decreased that by 107 absences. So that was 120 absences for the year, which resulted in an overall gain of 700 instructional hours for the students, just based on them consistently attending school. This here is our office disciplinary referral slide. In 2014 and 15, this cohort of 12 students received 490 office disciplinary referrals. We decreased that by 80% in 2015-16 to 98 office disciplinary referrals. We felt that there were many contributing factors to that, one of them being the classroom level system that allows students who are consistently displaying positive behavior to gain privileges, and the token reward system, which consistently praises students for positive behavior. Stop and think sheets were something that we added to allow students to reflect on their behavior within the classroom instead of having to leave the classroom. Restorative practices is something that Perry as a whole is adopting, and it allowed us to build a community within our class. The small student and teacher ratio helped greatly, along with the student success plans, but one of the largest factors was the homeschool relationship and scheduled celebrations for when the students achieved their goals.
So we learned a lot of things through this first year of the program, and we just want to highlight a few of those items for you. We know, and what the research also says, is early intervention is key, and our recommendation is for future considerations to begin as early as 3rd grade to start wrapping our most at-risk students and families. We know that we need to identify our most at-risk kids and then again articulate them through middle school and high school and really look at that gradual release model. Developing positive parent and family relationships, we know that that's important for all schools. It's especially important for students who fall in those at-risk categories. So practicing those positive, regular parent communications, home visits, planned celebrations, and again, those student success plan meetings. Number 3, additional staff and building level supports. We are thankful for those supports, and we're grateful for District 300's support in allowing us to pilot something like this for our kids. Practicing careful and intentional data collection and analysis to guide all decision making. We do take that responsibility greatly, and we will continue to monitor this program and make changes as needed. Number 5, to grow an informed and prepared building culture. So to do something like this, the whole entire building has to be aware of what you're doing and why and what kids we're serving and how. And we feel that's really important to consider. Number 6, to implement a school-wide trauma-informed model. A lot of our kids, especially in this program, do come from traumatic backgrounds and have experienced several adverse childhood experiences. And so really allowing an informed school approach and giving our teachers the skill sets and the information and the professional development that they need, not only to help them support our kids, but also for their own self-care is really important. That's something we're going to be working on this year. Number 7, to establish and maintain those community supports and partnerships, such as Streamline Behavioral Health. So in summary, our goal again today was just to provide you with additional information about the program, about its pilot year data, and some planning that we're continuing to do going into the 16-17 school year. So as you heard, we are expanding to a 4th grade program, as well as continuing with the cohort Mr. Langton has been working with into 5th grade in a co-taught model. We are looking at considerations and different models to support the multiple needs of a wrapped approach, such as the additional full-time teachers, paraeducators, social workers, just the amount of people involved in a wrapped service model such as this one. And engaging building staff in trauma-informed PD is something we're working on in our school improvement plan for 16-17, and then training the clinical staff to deliver evidence-based trauma interventions as well. Any questions?
Are we good?
That's awesome.
So let me provide the board with some additional context. Thank you. Excellent job.
Thank you very
Stay there
much.
just in case the board has additional follow-through. So why do we bring issues like this forward? It's not just to celebrate, and really we should absolutely celebrate the tremendous success they had. On average, these students individually averaged 41 disciplinary referrals each. 12 students, 400 and some odd number of referrals, an average of 41 disciplinary referrals each. And I'd have to do the math in my head real quick to figure out how many that is per day, per week, per month. But the reality of it is, I've been in Matt's class, and you've taken arguably students who, because they became disenfranchised at a very early age, because they're falling further and further behind, when you can't read with your peers and you can't attain the same level of numeracy skills, students disengage earlier and earlier. The research is supporting that. And I physically and personally have been in Matt's class on several occasions. Love his teaching style. He performs really well. He has a great attitude and aptitude with our students, a great connection to them. But one of the things I'd like to comment on is I was actually in his class once, and I was in the back of the room, and I clicked my pen or I had change in my pocket or something. His students turned around and shushed me. Not because they were being rude. Absolutely not. They were so deeply engaged in his activity, and to watch him and the skill, and this is very much an individual teacher skill, and we have a lot of our teachers exemplify this. But what typically has to happen in the classroom as well is what we call productive struggle. He has the ability to challenge a student to elevate their level of frustration, to force them to problem solve, and then he knows where to back off and provide support to push them even further. The success that he demonstrated in his classroom, and the reason why I asked them to present before the board, because clearly we're providing the additional staff for them to continue to grow this program. But I think that programs like this, we have students that fit this mold in every single school in our district. And if I can get 2 years of data that clearly indicates that this is the right model for us to use, as I think I've brought to the board before, we want to have a short term, I'll stretch, Joe, cover your ears. My statisticians in the room will panic. I'm going to provide some form of longitudinal data to be able to justify expansion moving forward. It's not just about class size either. I mean, we want to keep class size small enough to make it manageable, to let them address and individualize the needs of students. And I don't think that class size is necessarily always applicable to every student. Some students can succeed in very large classrooms. Other students require more one-on-one. Matt's exceptional at his job. I'm pleased to be able to have brought this before the board. I'm really thrilled with the progress Chris made and her staff have made in the building moving forward. Really excited to see the continued growth and improvement. Don't let those triangles say a lot with just the color shifts, but you're talking about students, and this is the important part. Every year a student progressed and fell further and further behind, we're losing that kid. And Matt and his team, the impact that they had on kids to bring those kids back to grade level, I don't think people realize how that impacted that child's trajectory forever. Not just for now, forever. The students had a level of success. They've learned how to adapt and modify in a struggling environment. They know how to engage with their peers without it becoming combative. It's just a tremendous statement to the skill set that they've demonstrated, the training and the commitment to those students and their parents and their families. So I wanted to personally commend you on a job well done, but I wanted to bring this before the board and our community to say these are the kinds of innovative programs that we continue to explore, and I'm excited to bring them back in a very short period of time to justify and argue why we need to do this for more of our kids. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
I asked just a couple questions. Did you create this model yourself, or was it a combination of ideas that you've gotten, or is this a particular plan that's already out there in the academic world?
So about I think it was the spring of 2015 or early winter of 2015, the idea of the ALAP model came to District 300, and Mr. Hyde was just seeking out resources and really thinking about that model, and that happened this year actually. But back then, I didn't know it existed, and so our team started quite a while ago now just researching that model, and we developed our parameters and our exit and entrance criterion off that model, and really had the opportunity to make it our own. And we adapted some things to make sure that it fit our school to what we thought was best. So what we did is we just took best practices and research-based approaches and infused it with that model. And it was a leap of faith, and we were well supported, and obviously a great team certainly helps quite a bit.
Yes, a great teacher.
Yes.
Do you use the exact same curriculum? So it's no change in curriculum, it's changes in methodology.
Correct. So we use the same curriculum as their fourth grade peers. So we're using math expressions as well as reading street. And we have a really great fourth grade team at Perry as well. So through our Reteach Enrich model, that has really helped improve the students' data and just fill in gaps that our students did have. And then just a lot of the student growth and the data binders and just empowering the students, I feel has really improved their skills, and is a large reason. The family support is huge as well. Just a large reason of why we're seeing success for the students.
I'm sorry for all these questions, ex-teacher here. So you did get family support, or was that difficult to obtain?
No, what we really worked towards at the beginning of the year was just making really positive connections for these families. Obviously, this group of students had the 490 office disciplinary referrals among the 12, so a lot of the contact was typically reactive. So we really tried as a team, Mr. Folta, Mr. Orange, just Ms. Sainsbury, trying to go down to Foxview and other community areas and just really make those positive connections with the families and conduct home visits, let them know the positives that were going on for the students. We had a lot of different programs that we were able to sponsor to wrap whole families, so we were able to, through a lot of community support, get many gifts during the holiday season for the students. We were able to sponsor Boys and Girls Club memberships, able to sponsor basketball memberships. So it was just really a great community approach.
So if this goes to 5th grade, are you going to loop and have those same kids again?
I am looping with the 5th grade students, and I will be co-teaching with another 5th grade teacher and pushing into the classroom.
Which would answer my next and last question. Will you or do you expect to see a change in the students coming back where you have to reteach because they've been back in those situations maybe that were not formative to their education?
Well, I think the one of the biggest things, and actually an outline of that ALAP criteria, is that we don't want to keep the students in the program for more than 2 years when unnecessary. So we really want to look toward getting them back with their grade level peers. And so yes, we do anticipate that there might be some situations that arise, but again, with that lower student to teacher ratio, I feel that they will still be able to be successful, and we'll learn as we go, and things will work themselves out. And those positive relationships are built, and that was a lot of the front work that we needed to do. So I think that will really help guide us through. And the families just have an incredible trust in our entire school team. So.
Awesome. So the other teachers in the building are all on board also, so I'm assuming?
Absolutely.
Because if they get mainstream back in with their peers, you would need a teacher that kind of understands maybe where they're coming from, I would think.
It takes the whole building.
It does, right. Takes a village. That's awesome, really awesome.
Thank you.
Mr. Fiorentino?
So my one, congratulations and thank you for everything to the entire team. I would just say, how do we replicate, and how do we replicate quickly, right? Because we've learned a lot. You certainly know the best practices. I'm sure you stumbled upon some things, but you did great work based on the numbers, and we expect that 5th grade will be equally successful. And how do we do this somewhere else, you know?
One more year, and we'll talk what that. They will be before you next year, talking about how we take this district wide. So.
Yeah.
And can I come and visit?
Absolutely.
Okay, you invite me. I don't want to come in.
Okay.
You got it. Ms. Garcia?
So, one of the saddest things that I'm feeling right now is that there's not a full room to honor your success. That there isn't the community here that might be here for another reason, but to hear about this because, like, I want to cry. I'm so happy for you guys, and I'm so happy for your students. And so, why didn't we know about this sooner? Why aren't we here? Why isn't the community being made aware of this?
But that is the purpose of tonight, because our meetings are recorded, and so we will continue to advertise. Mr.
But I want the
McGinn follows up.
newspapers to know. I mean, there's so much junk out there. This is good stuff. This is stuff we should be shouting.
So Mr. McGinn typically waits till after the board meeting, and then he
I'm giving
begins
him
the
eyes right
process
now.
of screaming it from the mountaintop. But we try to respectfully, we want to bring it before the board. And we did delay it by a month because there were other issues before the board that were taking up a considerable amount of time. So we did postpone it from an earlier meeting. But trust me, there will be a lot on our social media. Mr. McGinn will reach out. And we continue to want to celebrate this program. And I think as it grows, we'll continue to garner more attention for it.
It's the dedication of teachers. When I hear you guys saying you're going out into the communities, when you're in those communities, when you're doing things during the holiday season to make these students know that you care, you're making an impact on the rest of their lives. And I'm fortunate to have you as part of the district and this program. And if it's just these kids, we are a million times better for it. And now let's get it in all the schools for all the kids. Thank you.
So, one of the things, in addition to everything that was said, we have, 27,000 students in our district. And so here's a program, and it's 12. And so we look at, wow, 12 out of 20,000. But something that the community doesn't realize, that this board does, that this administration, and certainly you do, is that those 12, each of those 12, matter, and not every student learns or functions or prospers in the same way. But we don't need to have programs that address 20,000 students.
Right.
We can have programs that address 12 or 1, because each one of those students, 1 year, sorry, I'm just getting over this cold. A year of education in a student's life matters. And so if you lose a year in kindergarten or first grade or second grade, now it's cumulative. And we can't say, it's education, we're planning for the future, we're going to make these programs and those programs. Well, what about those kids that are right there right now? So here's 12 that, as board members pointed out, are making a difference, and they matter. And what happens what happens to them matters. So I think I love this program. I love the results. I can't wait to see next year's, the data. Can't wait to see, I see those wheels turning in Mr. Hyde's mind about how we're going to bring this cross-district, or when he says cross-district, I think he doesn't mean just at the elementary level. So over the last 20 years, I've heard so many times, we don't look at individual student data. We look at overall, what is third grade doing? Overall, what is fifth grade doing? Instead of looking at those individual students, and this looks at those individual students. I am still in shock at the suicide percentage for elementary school. And in my previous world dealing with criminal defense, I thought I saw it all. But that's an incredible high amount for kids that young. So, to echo what everybody's comments were, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Like that for us for tonight?
Not tonight, but it was a lot of intentionality behind why I showed you the budget before we talked about this program. But at this time, I am going to ask Mr. Ehrman to join us at the podium. As part of the district reorg, he works as the coordinator for research and accountability under Ms. Patty Schmidt. He's here to talk with you this evening about a modification to the school schedule, the calendar year, because of the state's transition to SAT. And the number of students that we're required to test, he'll discuss very briefly in I think it's 2 or 3 slides, the recommendation for one final revision to our school calendar for a modified attendance day so we can get all of our students seated and tested, and we have enough proctors to support that. So, Joe?
Thank you very much, Mr. Hyde. So I'm looking at the high school assessment only days. We're looking at 2 different days, and they're spread out by several months, and it's based off what we're going to see here in a little bit. Illinois has chosen to go with, for the college entrance test, the SAT for the next few years. And so District 300 is kind of going to be working with the College Board and looking at the SAT suite of assessments. And so looking at the very first day, that Wednesday, October 19th, we're looking at the PSAT and MSQT. It's a lot of letters. It's really standing for a practice SAT, but it's also paired up with the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. And so students who actually do well have potential to be able to get our scholarships or recognitions with that. And that's for juniors. And then the PSAT 9 is just a practice test, and that's for freshmen. So seniors and sophomores won't be in attendance on that day. All faculty and staff will then be in attendance, and they'll be working with the different testing roles. Testing will run from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30, with a bus departure probably about noon. And that date was determined by College Board, so we don't have actual control over that date. Wednesday, April 5th, has a state-funded SAT, and that's for juniors also. And that is their college entrance test then. The PSAT 10 is for sophomores. Seniors and freshmen will not be in attendance on that day. All faculty and staff, once again, will still be in attendance, and they'll be doing the testing roles. That test is a little bit longer. It does have a writing portion on that day, so it goes until about 12:30. And that date was determined by both College Board and the Illinois State Board of Education. The rationale for having these assessment-only days then is both organizational and instructional. Organizational, about creating that proper testing environment, about having proper test room supervisors and just the rooms in general. Shared responsibility among faculty and staff, so that's all across all the teachers. They all have similar roles in. And assurances that the disruptions aren't going to be impacting the testing environment. Instructionally, then, it's we're trying to minimize those days, so it's just 2 days of testing instead of having 4 separate testing days with 4 separate tests. If in that there'll be issues with getting substitute teachers, trying to relocate rooms and where are students going to, affecting different class sizes. Some may be fine, but some maybe are much smaller, which could affect or put a strain on the lesson plans for teachers. And then not having the bells and some of the other movement could really disrupt the environment. And so the last piece then with the tests ending kind of earlier in the day, it's trying to think about how do we send the students back to the class and for the other next hour or two. So those are kind of the reasons why we're looking at for having those 2 high school assessment only days. There's just a couple slides, so
just wait in case there's any questions.
yes.
And Joe, just as a reminder, there's no impact to any other school grades other than the high school, correct? So elementary through 8th grade, we'd run the traditional schedule.
Yes, everything's going to fit within the schedule.
Ms. Garcia?
Is that, there was lots of letters, and it was like NM,
Yes.
and I got the first 2. Yes. Is that new?
So that test has existed for a pretty long time. We've actually done it where students were voluntarily choosing to take that test. Once again, because the NMSQT part is part of it, students can possibly get scholarships or get recognition for that. So this year, as part of the SAT suite of assessments, which is 2 years old, SATs had that. And with Illinois going to the SAT this year, it made sense to then, as a district, to kind of go for that suite of assessments. So PSAT 9 and PSAT 10 are only 2 years old, so they're brand new. There is no scholarships or recognition for those. That's why you don't see so many letters.
So is that no longer then optional for students to take, that maybe chose not to take it last year or the year, or?
So a few
Sure didn't take that.
Well, so then a few years ago, when your senior was a freshman, they were taking what was called the PLAN test, which was aligned with the ACT. Then they were taking the IACT that sophomore year, which once again was aligned with the ACT. So with Illinois going to the SAT, it's once again just realigning it.
Okay, cool.
As I recall, the PSAT that was given was usually on during the school year, and it was up to the individual students and families to register for that.
Yeah. So they used to give 2 different days, and they've gone away from the Saturdays. And,
Yeah, I think that part of the 2 different days had to do with religious issues on Saturday testing.
Right.
And so there was always an alternative date for those that could not test because of religious reasons.
Yeah, since this is a state mandated test, it's going to happen during a traditional school week, and it's not a voluntary test. So we will administer during the week.
We may find that we have more students that qualify as a National Merit Scholar.
We will
because
most definitely find that we have more students qualify.
This was, again, it's been a few years since I had a student that was in that age group. But the PSAT was the only way to qualify for the National Merit Scholar. If a student did not register for that and take it, there was no other alternative. And so by having this as a requirement during the school year, during the school day, students, I think it'll be a good thing for us. Will we be seeing a school calendar change?
Yes, ma'am.
Reflect
So
this?
based on the feedback this evening, we'll bring an official calendar back to the board at the next board meeting for final vote and approval. And then we will begin the messaging out to parents and staff about the modification to the calendar.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last portion of the superintendent's report for this evening are the good news talking points. For those in the audience who may be here for another topic, if you noticed in the agenda, that topic is a standalone line item that will be addressed later in the board meeting. But let me begin with a seal of biliteracy. As you recall, several years ago, the state adopted a seal of biliteracy that could be attached to a student's diploma that indicates their successful completion of coursework. Last year, 12 of our seniors representing all 3 of our high schools earned that seal of biliteracy on their diploma. These students earned a 4 or 5 on the AP Spanish Language and Culture test and demonstrated proficiency in English on the ACT of Access test. Additionally, 12 students earned a commendation towards the seal of biliteracy on their diploma by earning a 3 on the AP Spanish test and demonstrating proficiency on the ACT of Access test as well. It is also notable to point out that we have 16 students that were in grades 9, 10, and 11 last year that have already earned a qualifying score for this as well. Moving on, I love this young man's name, Satchel Hudson. The Village of Carpentersville recently recognized him, and we did advertise this aggressively on our social media posts. They did recognize him. He is a gymnast, and they named July 26th Satchel Hudson Day. And Satchel was the winner of the 2016 IHSA State Championship in still rings and vault. He took second place in the all-around competition, and to commemorate this remarkable achievement, the Carpentersville Public Works Department presented a street sign to Satchel and posted several of them throughout the village, recognizing him for his accomplishments. The sign reads, Dundee Crown High School, home of Satchel Hudson, 2016 IHSA Gymnastics Still Rings and Vault State Champion, second place all around. And considering the time in which we're in with the Olympics taking place, and many of us focusing on Mr. Yeager in the very near future, it's interesting to know that we may be seeing Satchel there, hopefully. Next one, Gulfview, Meadowdale, and Dundee Crown High School hosted a joint, kind of back-to-school community event last Friday. They had great attendance. Gulfview Principal Lindsay Sharp and Meadowdale Principal Dr. Martina Smith teamed up with Mr. LaRosa and his administrative team from Dundee Crown High School to host the event on the Gulfview campus. As the board knows, one of the goals in our strategic plan is to engage family and the community, and this event perfectly captured the spirit of that goal. The event included a vast assortment of foods, drinks, games, and a DJ. DJ, I believe, donated his services, and it was a wonderful way to engage our community and help provide excitement for our students and their families as they look forward to the school year. They also had representation from the local law enforcement agencies, and they also had representation there from fire, rescue, and EMT, who unfortunately got called to an emergency towards the end of the event, but that's okay. That means you got to hear all the sirens go and then throw on all their gear. So the kids got to see a real hands-on experience. But there was dancing. Last year we invested some of our Pepsi, Coca-Cola funds, my discretionary budget. We bought a popcorn machine, a snow cone machine, and we bought a cotton candy machine so that schools don't have to basically incur a cost to rent those when they try and host their community events and other celebrations. And so this was the first opportunity for them to be used, and they definitely got used. There was a lot of cotton candy being made, more, I think, into people's hair who was making them. And what I liked, and please understand, and I'm kind of going on elaborating a little bit about this event because I was really proud of the fact that I met several of the people who I saw there late in the evening. I met that morning because they're brand new teachers to our district who will be working in one of those 3 schools. And they went there after induction, after a long day, and were there volunteering their time, all dressed up, to celebrate and start to meet the community and our students. So what a huge testament to our kids. And to these 3 leaders who are doing a great job to not only approach issues of educating our students on a case-by-case school level basis, but really looking at how do we wrap around as a community to support our students who have a greater need. Perry was not there only because they had a competing event. They had just done their event in Foxview, and I will talk about that in a near future. The last item for this evening is the 2016 update about the golf outing. So as you know, each year the Education Foundation, as part of their fundraising initiatives, hosts the foundation golf outing. This year at Randall Oaks, once again, we had numerous teams. You see some of us there. The games were hilarious. Rolling dice. They had an air cannon that you could use to shoot the golf ball, and I believe it went about 400 something yards. It was pretty impressive. I still managed to miss the green, but it was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, we got rained out towards the end. Most groups only played about 9 or 10 holes, but that didn't stop everybody from celebrating. On a personal note, I did volunteer that as a raffle prize for like a last-minute raffle for like a second chance drawing that somebody could draw and have lunch with me. And I didn't win a single thing up until that point, and they drew my ticket, so I get to have lunch with myself. And we did throw it back in, and then it turns around. One of our, Dave, one of our foundation members, won also, and he said, I can have lunch with you anytime. I don't need to do this. So I agreed that we would put that back into the upcoming event that they're hosting for the Mardi Gras fundraiser coming up. My hope is that, well, it was a second chance, so everybody's ticket went in. No, and you're cutting into the joke, but so my hope is that Mrs. Hyde comes, and at least there'll be one ticket in that raffle drawing for lunch with me. Way to go, Ms. Sportson. Thank you so much for stealing my thunder. But I would say Mr. Fiorentino and several others who are here this evening participate in this event. Really, his family business sponsored one of the holes. Really thankful to them for their commitment. They, as you see in the upper left-hand corner, they wore matching team uniforms. My team in the upper right-hand corner, clearly we did not. But it was a lot of fun, and it always is, and it's a great way to kind of come back and celebrate the start of the school year. I really give the foundation tremendous kudos because the organization exemplifies really a commitment to excellence in our classrooms. And as you know, all of the money that they raise goes to support projects through small grants, medium-sized grants, and large grants each and every year to support our teachers based on innovative ideas. So I do want to give them kudos as well. And that concludes the superintendent's report for this evening.
Okay. We had no one sign up under public participation. And legislative updates. Mr. Hyde, did you have anything? Mrs. Burley is no.
I do not at this time, no, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to item 12, which is going to be our discussion items. As in the past, I'll go down. I've not had anyone indicate previously that they had an item for discussion. I will watch for someone to say. Okay, 12.1, 12.2, 12.3, 12.4, 12.5, 12.6, 12.7, 12.8, 9, 12.10, 12.11, 12.12, 12.13, 12.14, 12.16, 12.17. Okay, motion for consent items.
So moved.
All in favor? I'm sorry. Yeah, you got me going there. Mr. Alessio, please.
Dino,
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Alessio, aye. Lopez.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Item 14.1, approval to publish the fiscal year 2016-17 tentative budget. Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Alessio.
Garcia.
Aye.
Alessio, aye. Lopez.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Fiorentino.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Item number 15, Cambridge Lakes Charter School update. As most everyone here knows, at every one of our meetings, Mr. Hyde's been giving us an update on the process of the charter school renewal. Mr. Hyde.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm pleased to share with the board that at this point, we are arguably with the contract and with the corrective action plan. I think we've reached consensus on all of our requirements and requests to date. There are a handful of revisions that are being done currently. One, for example, was they left out someone's position title, so they're editing that. My recommendation to the board this evening would be that the board direct me to make Monday the final day when their entire renewal package should be resubmitted. I think that's an appropriate timeline in order for the board to prepare for the 17th. Considering where we are, I do not believe that creates any hardship whatsoever. Any of the talking points or issues outlined in the plan, the corrective action plan, and or the contract renewal aspect have all been met. I'm pleased to share with the board that they did agree to an accountability plan. Please understand the accountability plan, and I'm stating this more for public record, is not just a means for annual auditing and accountability purposes, but it is, unlike our current contract, it clearly delineates what metrics are used for the renewal process. Under our current contract, renewals are done basically, they turn in a renewal and there's an expectation that within 30 days the board will act on it. But there are no metrics clearly delineated. We derived and took the accountability plan directly from the Illinois Charter School Commission. It's the accountability plan they use to evaluate and consider renewal, non-renewal or revocation of an existing charter, and it's comprised of three basic component areas: fiscal responsibility, academic performance, and compliance. And I believe that the board and others would agree that those encompass all of the concerns that we've outlined in the corrective action plans to date. Very pleased with the progress that we've made. Clearly, we're right back with the contract and the renewal and the caps where we began. There's one issue that the board will have to address at the 17th or after the meeting on the 17th. But at this point, we're comfortable moving forward, and I'm glad that the board selected the 17th. I did need to ask a clarifying question of the board. The time for that meeting, will it be 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. so that we can do our public announcements? I believe the last one was scheduled for 6:30, if I remember correctly, Ms. Keys.
I spoke with her earlier today. She'll go along with what the majority of the board is. Mrs. Burley has to leave to go to Ohio for family matters early in the morning. So the earlier we had it would be better for her. However, she did indicate to me earlier today that she'd go with what the board is best. So I'm going to ask Ms. Garcia and Mr. Alessio, who will be traveling the furthest, what time would work best for you to get out to Hampshire on the 17th? That was 6?
I cannot make 6. I'll be late.
6:30?
6:38, I could push it. So you want to have a sandwich for me, that'd be nice.
Mr. Fiorentino, you had to rearrange things in order to make the 17th work. Do you have specific
I just-
time frame?
I would
there,
just
or-
ask, does it make a difference, do you think, the community besides the board? I mean, I'm
It is
okay
a
with
school night,
Right,
so we don't want to go too late.
right.
So, you
I'm
know.
good with 6:30 if that's-
6:30,
yeah.
Mrs. Lopez, does 6:30 work for you?
Takes me 5 minutes, yeah.
You deserve it.
Mr. Lesser, can you do 6:30? Okay, so,
Okay, Ms. Keys will finalize the plans, and if there's any conflicts as far as the physical location of the meeting, we will apprise the board and community of that. But right now, we don't anticipate any.
So, and the plan is to be at Hampshire, and will we have closed session prior to the meeting?
well, it's really supposed to be what, the public hearing meeting. So I don't know that, we,
Do after?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we could do it after, if we have a need
If
for
needed.
one.
Yes, ma'am.
We would have it then.
So we will advertise that, we'll notify NKEC and their attorneys of that date selection. Just for the clarification, NKEC would have an opportunity to present their renewal application before the board. The board will have an opportunity to ask any questions, provide commentary, and then ultimately provide me with direction as to how to finalize my recommendation for the board. The district will have a presentation. We'll address some of our key areas and concerns, and then you'll have public participation. That is what's required under school code, and the charter school code in particular for the renewal process. And then the board after that has 30 days upon to act following the public hearing.
Okay, Ms. Garcia?
When you're saying that the charter school will present their renewal package, is that just, I'm trying to avoid the last meeting that we had where we had the narrative of the guy with Larry Farrow's narrative. It takes up a lot of time, and it was really kind of winding and maybe not on point. Especially considering the fact that we're anticipating public participation. Is it a more directed presentation? I'm not probably voicing.
I would say that considering the amount of information the board has been privy to up to this time, there isn't a lot of need for a significant background summary, and that we have asked that the renewal app eliminate some of what we feel is superfluous information and documentation, that it really focus on the essential areas as outlined in code. We would expect that they would present on the contract and the terms in which we've agreed to, and on the corrective action plans, and that might be the summary. We're not sure. We don't typically dictate who presents or what they present. We can provide a time limit as if needed. But again, I think this topic has been out in the public for some time. I don't think there's a lot of discourse to be had. So the time arguably might be better spent, to your point, on questions and follow through from the board, or anticipate a significant
I'm just concerned
exchange.
that those types of not directives, but suggestions are.
We can provide some feedback to the.
Yeah, and the highlights for me last time were hearing from staff and the community, so do we need to make a decision as to, do we amend our typical public comments because of the expected numbers, or are we going to stay with what we did last time, which seemed to work? Is that something we should do now?
I think the board, Ms. Miller, I don't suppose to speak for you, but the board policy does already outline what our expectations and policies are regarding public speaking, especially if it goes beyond a certain time. I think the board could absolutely continue to enforce and support that, or the board has the option to do something completely different. I think it's really going to depend on the tenor and what happens and transpires during the renewal presentations.
I was just going to respectfully request that we include those guidelines in the publication of the meeting times, like we did with the first one. I think it's helpful to let the community know the process. If you want to speak, you need to sign in.
That is part of every agenda that gets published and posted. That is italicized in the
Yeah,
agenda.
maybe I should look at that.
So I think when we put together the agenda for the meeting on the 17th, because it will need to be posted probably, well, Mrs. Keys probably wants it done tomorrow morning, but maybe by Friday, when we do that, we can include in the agendas, you mentioned the information about public participation. And I think public participation would go at a different place on the agenda so that we can, the presentations, they can hear our, I mean, both from the charter school, from the school district, hear our comments, and then we can hear what their comments are, and then give you, have some discussion and give you some direction. If we follow our policy on public participation, we limit it to 2 hours. And again, I'm very cognizant that it's a school night. People that are going to be publicly participating most likely are going to be parents. And although the charter school does not start school until later, it still is a school night, especially for some board members. It's like we want to watch that timeline, not public comment, but after 2 hours, we just follow our policy. As long as we follow our policy there, it should be okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Board discussion items. We heard a lot about finance. Is there anything more from the finance committee?
No, just discuss the budget.
Okay. Construction and facility oversight. Mr. Fiorentino, was there any update on that?
I was not present at the last one. I was on vacation, so if there are questions, I would defer to Ms. Harkin.
Okay. We do not need a second closed session, so I would, if board members, any other comments or questions? Otherwise.
No, watch.
Good luck with the start of school.
Yeah.
Yes.
Start of school. Make sure you watch Evan on August 15th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is he on the 15th?
That's the prelims.
Yeah. Monday,
Right.
Wednesday? Okay. Good luck. And I'm curious, Mrs. Wycott is sitting out there. It's got to be a little bit of a different start to the first of the year for you after so many years being a principal, and to others that are in different roles this year. So good luck in making that transition on that first day. That's, every year your kids and everyone have birthdays, and we all get, but it seems that it's the first day of school that we really recognize and see the growth. Because now instead of kindergarten, they're in first grade, or instead of middle school, they're in high school, or instead of high school, they're just not around. So it's a very exciting, the two best days in the school year are the first day and the last day. Well, graduation day count as being part of the last day, but yes, absolutely. So good luck, everybody. Have a great school year. Thank you. And then a motion to adjourn.
Second?
See Garcia,
Yes.
Fiorentino,
Aye.
Alessio, aye. Lopez, Miller,
Aye.
passes 5-0.
Thank you.